If you're wondering what I'm waiting for, just to see if this is going up, I'm basically using this as an experiment tonight as well. I'm using, well, there we are. We've got someone. Great. Thanks for being here. Hey, like I said, I'm kind of conducting an experiment with this live stream today. And what I'm doing is I've got both the Wi-Fi on and the phone connection to the phone internet service. In case one goes down, let's see if the other one kicks in. So I'm just experimenting. So if you lose me, if this doesn't go up on my website, on my YouTube site, understand it's because I'm messing around. Okay, and we'll go from there. Thank you for coming in. Can anyone see my chat? I can see you. Yeah, William. Um, I am having some refreshment tonight, but it is only water. Okay, it is honestly only water. I looked at some of the comments from yesterday, and there was a question about my book, The Crimson Thread, which I've shown several times and which I discussed in the Eisenman series in the playlists. Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of things. Hold your chat questions for now, because we're gonna. I promised to do something tonight that I kind of fell behind on before. Okay, I haven't. I'll tell you in a minute. Anyway, so I had a question about my book. So in the description box below is a link to the website where you can read The Crimson Thread in its manuscript form. I also read through it, but there's some problems. The chapter one was done twice. So on the read, not the yeah on the reading. So you miss the important things that are in the introduction to the book. So read the introduction at least. Okay, even if you don't read anything else and you want to listen to me reading the book, make sure that you get the information in the introduction, because if you don't have that, you won't really have a basis for why I did what I did. Okay, so I just want to tell you that. The other thing is that I wanted to do this Q&A because people said, well, we'd like to ask questions about the book that you wrote. Well, I did do one of those about 6 months ago or so, 5 months ago. But I thought I'd go ahead and kind of open that up today. Okay, so here we are. The other thing is that uh, not to try to explain it away or anything like that, but just to again emphasize that yesterday was a really bad day for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to go into it. I'd been up at 4 o'clock in the morning, traveled 300 miles, had to take care of some things, and was really tired last night. Had already gone to bed, and that thing, hey, you got to get up and talk about this thing that's happened that I talked about last night. I'm not going to rehash that. And so I decided to, of course, I'm a real lightweight when it comes to alcohol. I really don't drink a lot. Maybe frequently, as far as maybe 2 or 3 times a week, I'll have a shot or two. But at any rate, most of it last night was because I was tired, and I got upset with some people, but I would have done that even if I hadn't been. A lot of folks look at me, especially those who know me, and they say, Roy, there's no way you could have been a soldier or a police officer. You're just too mellow. That's not possible. Uh, until my ire gets raised. And there were people last night that were getting my ire raised. So I just decided that it's probably good once in a while to show that I can be as fierce as a lion. My birth sign is right on the cusp of Cancer and Leo. So I can be real mild, mannered, kind of watery, or I can be, like a lion and fiery. I definitely have those two traits in me, and they come out all the time, okay? Last night I let that one come out because I really am concerned that people are they've just been pacified for their entire lives, and we have been for thousands of years. I'm not going to get into that history tonight, kind of like I did last night, but I just wanted to explain that. So I can rise to the occasion. If you want to push me, you're going to get it. Okay, just so you know. Now, if you want to be reasonable and say, good questions and act civil and not do accusatory things, I'll be real reasonable with you back. Okay, but I don't put up with impudence or disrespect or BS. Okay, never have, never will. I don't care who you are. So that's put aside now. I explained that last night. I wanted to show that I'm not a passive aggressive. Okay, I can let you have it, and I think you all know that. All right. Okay, so pushing all that aside, we're going to do this Q&A and Ask Me Anything, and it's going to revolve around actually any subject matter you want. Those who want to ask about my book, that's fine, but I probably will do a Q&A just about that again in the future at some point. But I will take some of those questions tonight. Now, be patient. I can't see all of the chat at once, and I might not get to well, I'm not going to get to everybody. I know I'm not going to get to everybody, but I'll try to pick up good questions. Unlike many times in the past, for some reason, the accusatory chats and the ones that want to challenge me in a bad way, for some reason or other, I see those really easily. And I think it's because they throw so many up on the screen. These people that want to foment discord and get me off subject, which is, as you can tell, sometimes quite easy to do. I think they throw a lot of these things up on the chat, and that's why I see them and I answer them. Tonight, I promise you, I am not going to pay attention to anybody that says something like that to get me off topic or to get me angry. Okay, if I see it, I'm just going to ignore it. Just a heads up front. I owe it to the people that come here with legitimate questions and legitimate things to say to pay attention to you. Okay, and I'm very sorry that I get sidetracked on those things, but I think it's a numbers game, and that's probably why I do it. Now, we'll get to the questions. You might be wondering what's on the board here. I'm not going to tell you. This is for a future, possibly. This is a tough subject here. This is a really tough subject, and as you can tell, it's in Daniel chapter 6, verse 18. And I've written it up in the Hebrew. I'm not going to tell you what it is. At some time in the future, we'll probably talk about this because it's not what it's been translated in the King James Version. Okay, it's not. It's something else entirely, and it's right in the Word. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that up. We'll have a future discussion on this and its related topics, which a lot of people aren't going to like. But you know me, I like to cover those things that cause people to have a little discomfort because they need to come out of their comfort zones. Okay, you are fierce for sure, but also wise. Well, okay, that's another thing. You don't have to come here and give me accolades, and I appreciate that very, very much because I really do try to give you things to think about. Not really be dogmatic about it or anything like that, but things to think about because we really need to understand what's going on in the world. And I don't want anybody to think I don't believe in what's written in the Bible. It's just that I see that there are things in there that not only are contradictory to itself, but also are based on people trying to push their agenda. Okay. And I see that very easily. So that's the reason why I show you these things. I don't want to destroy anybody's faith or attack it, but by the same token, you have to understand that when things are in there that contradict the blessings that mankind has been given, let me put it that way, there are problems with that. Okay, and I will come after that fast. Yeah, did you see Mormon Church? Yeah, of course, endorse same-sex marriage. And of course, there's the bill before the Senate. I think the Senate's pushing it to codify it. This is all a sign that we're going further downhill every day, and it's not by accident. It is by design, as I've long said. Sorry about that. Let's see if there's. I might have to plug my phone in. I'm not sure what that was, but anyway, it may be losing power. Like I said, this is an experiment. So, at any rate. Yeah, there are friends of mine and I that have discussed this, and if the members of the church go along with this, that'll be a damnation upon all of them. I'll just say it plainly. My friends and I, that we've known each other for many years, decades actually, we said that when this happened and they started allowing this type of thing to occur on a normal basis, that it should witness to the members of the church that everything that I've been saying about the Mormon Church, that's I'm very critical of it, would be true. Okay, so here we are. They're going to be faced with this obvious opposition to Scripture and to what they consider to be revealed revelation prior to this. God changed his mind, I guess, and now it's okay. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, so it's a bad deal. Okay, it's a real bad deal. I'm going to plug this in now because I don't know what that was. It may have been that we're losing power real fast, so pardon me for blocking this. Okay, there we go. Just want to make sure we have power. Okay, there we are. All right. Good. All right. So now we're not going to lose power. Sorry about all the extra noise. Okay, so that's the first question. Yes, I know about that, and it's been on the back burner for a long time. They were just waiting for the government to tell them that they have to do it, and this thing going before the Senate is pretty much it. So they're trying to beat themselves and beat everybody else to the table. And it's a corrupt church. If they do that, it should be plainly manifest to everybody. And I mean that across the board with any of the Christians that are accepting this. Pastor Chuck Baldwin really comes after these pastors and these preachers and these church leaders who bow down to the government, because he knows they're not supposed to do that. That's not the way it's done. That's not the way it's supposed to be done. The church is supposed to stand up. The faithful are supposed to stand up for righteous principles and even oppose the government if necessary. But all that's been changed over the last, it actually started under Johnson, I guess, where you couldn't have the 501c3 status if you talked about politics. And yet that's exactly what the churches did during the Revolution. That's where a lot of the support for the Revolution, against Britain, came from, was in the churches, because they understood the principle of liberty and what this evil king was trying to do. Well, now our government's evil, and I've been talking about that for a long time. So anyway, yeah, that's a problem. It's really interesting because this is kind of having not to do with the same-sex marriages, but it's where we should be, and yet this has been denigrated for decades, if not thousands of years. As well as the man-woman relationship, saying it's dirty and filthy and, was the original sin. All those things that I've talked about. So that should give you a hint as to what this is here. We're not going to do that tonight, but I just wanted to put it up so anybody has a Strong's or a Gesenius or another Hebrew lexicon can look this word up. What it is Dalet, Chet, Waw, Vav, He. You should have seen that before somewhere, at least a portion of the word during my discussions. Okay, battalion is in my town, very obvious presence, but they are not in uniform. Battalion. What do you mean? Where are you? Who's this? Elizabeth Gulpy. Did I miss something here? See, that's the problem with the chat. I talk so much and then I can't address everything. Okay. A battalion is in your town and they're not in uniform. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Along that line, I might add, did you see what Xi Jinping did to Justin Trudeau? Justin Trudeau was talking, several years ago and quite often about how much he loves the Chinese system and their dictatorship. Well, when he came up and spilled, he and Xi Jinping had a meeting, and then he apparently went to the press and talked about, or told the press what he and Xi had talked about, which you don't do. You just don't do that. Leaders of the countries, they keep those discussions to themselves. In the United States, it's classified information. All right. Well, Justin Trudeau comes out and spills his beans, and it got Xi Jinping upset, and basically he told Trudeau off. Great stuff to see. So things like that little guy needs to go away, and he's a little man. He might be tall, but he's a little man. He needs to go away. Okay, let's see. Hey, Jesse, you're here. Roy, I have a question. Here we go. God created all living creatures and loved them, thus the ark. Could the slaughter of thousands of cattle and sheep be commanded by a lesser being They claim to be God. Ah, well, see, Jesse, that's what I like about you. You have these other insights. Okay. Um, I will say uh, probably not, in my opinion. You probably have reasons to go with yours. Uh, when Noah came off the ark, there's the issue of clean and unclean animals, right? And there's the issue of what's kosher and what isn't. Under the Mosaic law, there were things that they weren't supposed to eat, and I've talked about that for a long time as probably being an economic situation where they didn't want is. And I know people are going to go crazy on this, but I look at it that way. They didn't want the people to eat seafood of certain types because that's helping the Phoenicians, for instance, who were fishers, right? Of those types of sea creatures. The Israelites, wanted to trade amongst themselves with their lambs and their goats and that kind of thing. But getting distinctly to your question, and like I said, people aren't going to like my answer to that. All right. By the way, I don't like pork, but that's another issue also. Um, God says that every blood of a beast shall be accounted for, and that's apparently, from the way I read the text, that's the same one that said that every creature that crawleth can now be food to you. Okay. So what I think it is that prior to the fall, especially, there was abundant food. Food was not a problem. We have to ask ourselves, well, how come there are tigers with saber teeth and obviously carnivores and things like that? How did that happen? And I'm not going to get into all of that, but I'm just addressing it what you just said. And if you want to add to this or give your explanation, I'd certainly love to hear it. But basically, when they came off the ark, they were told that every creeping thing was food for them, um, and yet at the same time, that same God said that the blood of every beast shall you be held accountable for. So in other words, it can be food for you, but you can't waste it. Um, you can't go out there and just kill an animal because it's fun. All right, you have to have a need, and it has to be used. Okay, so I don't think it's a different God. I think it has to do with the situation in the earth, the way things weren't as bountiful after all this happened. Not just the fall, but the situation with the flood. That's my look at it, Jesse. Um, I get talking to a lot of people, and I've talked about this before, where uh, people say, well, there's Elohim in the first and second chapter of Genesis, and then it changes to Lord Elohim, or in other words, God in the first two chapters, and then it goes to Lord God, and they say, oh, that's a different person. No, it has to do with the estate of the earth itself, not the God that's doing it. Because remember, I showed you in the first sentence of Genesis, it talks about the et, the aleph tav, which is the same thing in Hebrew that's in Greek, the alpha and omega, and it's right there. So that's the God that created this world and has control over it. Allowed Satan to take, well, Satan's not really the right term either, allowed the evil ones to come in and start causing problems. And that's for our experience, as hard as it is, going through great tribulation and all that. But I think it has to do more with the state of the earth, okay? And I guess, it makes sense that there's no death where God is. Well, meat's not a food. It's pretty obvious, right? But some people take that to another extreme. And of course, I'm very much against this. They'll also say, well, there's no need for sex, so there's no men and women, there's no male or female, there's no sexual desire, there's none of this in heaven either. And I categorically refute that, okay, wholeheartedly. It's a whole different ball game between eating meat and destroying what mankind is, or altering them to such a point that they're no longer what they were created to be. So I refute that. And, that'll be a long dissertation and a long disagreement for a long time. So if you have another look on that, please put it up there. Remember, Abel was sacrificing a lamb, right? And Cain, and that's right there, right after the fall, right? And Cain has the vegetables, right, from the fruits of the field, and Abel's offering was accepted. Now, is that a different God? No, we're still talking about YHVH. All right. Now, according to a later scripture, the early patriarchs did not know God by that name or by the Haya Asher Haya. Okay, I am that I am, or I will be who I will be. But basically, the YHVH. Um, and yet, I found that that's probably not the case because it's actually talked about in quite a bit before that uh, that scripture where it says that by my name did they not know me, by that name they only knew me by God Almighty, right? But there were some indications that that wasn't the case. So it was one of those things in the text that caused a problem. Anyway, Jesse, that's a long answer to you, but if you have a different look on it, let me know. I don't think it was a different God. I think that evil came into the world, obviously, at that earlier, but that whole thing with the animals and the change in the food supply, you know, no, I don't think so. That's my own personal opinion. But is your heart truly open to falling in love again? Lisa D. Oh, hi, Lisa. Look, Lisa, I haven't been on my DMs for a long time um, because, there are a lot of reasons. A lot of people might say, why are you talking to Lisa D. Grace this way? Well, Lisa really enjoys my stuff, and she was trying to say, maybe we can be friends and things like that. But man, thousands of miles apart, no, that doesn't work. Okay, it just doesn't work. And but more than that, I had to stop doing my DMs because I was getting accosted by tons of people from the intelligence community. And I don't know who's who on there, and with the situation the way it is, I just stopped my DMs altogether. So I wish you all the luck there, Lisa. You're a very nice lady, very pretty. I like blonde, blue, all that. But I mean, realistically, wow, your family's there, mine's here. I mean, wow, that's tough. But thank you so much. Okay, I appreciate it. It's what's this, Lori? Oh, hi, Lori. I should know what GTSY is here tonight. Go to. I'm sorry, I forget what that acronym is for. But yeah, we're here live, and I want to take questions. Okay. Blonde battle. Oh, okay, hold on a second. So you guys are having some of these back and forths between yourselves, so I'm not going to be able to catch up on that. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to avoid all the attacks. Are Mormons very hierarchical, and the sheep will do? Yeah. Mormon Church is extremely hierarchical. So much. I mean, for merely asking a question. Back in when I got in trouble, I didn't get thrown out originally for plural marriage or anything like that. Uh, they use that as an additional attack later, but I went in with a simple question. I'm not going to tell you about what it is, but it was the nature of God. The exact question that I had was about the nature of God. And again, I won't tell you exactly what that was. It's just not worth getting into tonight. But I just went in with a simple question. And the way it happened is I was studying. I have obviously I have a habit of study, right? And I always have. And so I found this issue that was talked about in the early church, Mormon church, that was banned later. And I didn't even really know it was banned. And so I went to a friend of mine who worked for me, actually, and I asked him the question. He was what they call a stake missionary. He was a 70. And in the priesthood, you have deacon, the Aaronic priesthood and Melchizedek in the Mormon church. And he was a 70, which is kind of in the middle. You have elders, 70s, and high priests. Anyway, well, he said, Roy, you're not supposed to ask about that. I said, well, I didn't know that. Well, he went to the stake president, and they started basically, in the long run, excommunication for me asking that question. It's what started that ball rolling. Very hierarchical. They don't like questions about their history. This situation with same-sex marriage now goes entirely against everything that they've supposedly stood for. So, yeah, it's very hierarchical, and it's run by a bunch of evil old men, period, who are loved by the members of the church because they just refuse to see it. Maybe now their eyes will be open. Okay, let's look for questions. That's what we're here for, okay? I love Chuck, but he is wrong about. Yeah, you mean Chuck, Pastor Chuck Baldwin? Yeah, I know. Um, I have issues with Pastor Baldwin. I do. He and I, when I first came out with my book, The Crimson Thread, I got on a blog. I think I've talked about this before. It was a Christian blog of scholars, people that have master's degrees, PhDs, things like that. And he and I butted heads. I mean, I didn't dislike him for it. These are issues that somewhat have to do with, your understanding, your faith, and some other things. But he and I clashed, and it wouldn't surprise me that he would think that Lavoie was a problem. I don't. I knew Lavoie, and no, I don't. I would disagree with Chuck Baldwin about that. I mean, he's in trouble because he talks about Second Amendment all the time. They've come after him for being an extremist. Lavoie just did what Chuck talks about. Okay, that's just the fact of the matter. Thank you for coming on at this hour. I'd love to stay, but it's time to pray. Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Toda. Oh, yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, it is. It's sundown. I understand. Okay, or that time of the evening. I understand. I come on now. I had to check. I wanted to make sure that Felicia Lockhart wasn't doing anything because a lot of times she'll have live streams, in the evening. Um, she wasn't doing it on her own channel or Headlines with a Voice, and I didn't see that Monty was up. At least I hope not, because I think I caused a problem for him last night. But yeah, so no, I understand people having to go do things, but I figured I needed to do this so that people would know that I really, I do have an even keel, right? But I can rise to the occasion and be a fierce warrior if I need to, and debater. Yeah, I really like Chuck Baldwin. He and Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Heiser, are my favorites. Okay. They seem to, the two of them put together seem to cover pretty much the gamut of everything. Michael Heiser will he's a stern supporter of the Bible, both Old and New Testaments, but he's very much about clarifying things, kind of like I do. Okay, and I probably do it more than he does, but he does a very good job, and Chuck is great. Marriage is righteousness, marrying truth. Christopher. Okay. All right. What books can I read to understand my beliefs? Wow. Well, I have come about this from almost a lifetime of study, reflection, meditation, prayer, a lot of things, and that still doesn't mean I'm on totally the right course. As I've said, I don't, how, for instance, how can I say that I understand things like this in real life, and yet I also say that I can't trust the Bible as the ineffable, immutable, infallible Word of God? Well, because men are in there. They're, no matter what you think, men are in there manipulating things for their agendas, and all you got to do is look at all the different versions of the Bible, and you'll understand that. Or what happened during the course of the development of Christianity in the earlier years, which I get from, and I talked about it, Josephus, okay, uh, uh, looking at what happened during the Council of Yavna with the Jews, the Council of Nicaea with the Christians, uh, the thing with Philo and his wanting to Hellenize Judaism and probably using the Messianic movement to accomplish that by changing that. Yeah, so you have to take all these things into consideration historically. And so I don't know that I could give you a single thing um, to tell you what it would be. I think the easiest thing to do would be, as I've often said, get a Strong's, get a Gesenius. Put these out here and show these again. Whoops, I'm dropping everything. Learn. I'm not saying you even have to speak Hebrew or understand it when you hear it. You've got to look at the letters and start understanding what the individual letters mean. And even Strong's and Gesenius won't give you that really. Gesenius kind of does. For instance, he'll say that the Vav is a nail or that Nun is a fish. All right, he will say that. So you want to get Gesenius, and this is going to take you a long time of study. You want to get a Strong's. And I didn't come on here to do a spiritual thing tonight, but get those types of books. That'll get you started. Okay. Um, yeah, I didn't come on here with the intent of doing spiritual discussion tonight. I thought you might want to talk about things like what's really happening in Ukraine, what's happening in China, what's happening to our government, the United States government, or for that matter, the European governments, and then we could include Australia and New Zealand, or the same-sex marriage thing that's now being pushed really hard, and it's going to happen. We're a degraded, demented, um, evil society. Okay, I mean, look, how long did they push women's rights? Well, they did that to divide men from women and to get women out in the workforce and tax them and get them out of the house so they couldn't raise their kids, have somebody else do it, turn them into soldiers, which they were never supposed to be. I mean, in emergencies, you got to protect yourself, but, look at the way things are going, which is really bad. Um, but now, what happens? Well, you see, men are entering women's sports, or men who say they're women. See, so the women aren't being protected. This was all a setup to destroy our culture, to destroy the man-woman relationship, which is why I talk about it so much and include things like this right here. Okay? So, they're liars and deceivers up there. The whole idea is to destroy mankind. That's what I've been telling everybody for a long time. It's not even about Russia. It's not even about China. It's about destroying mankind, stealing from us, taking our sustenance. Look what the Declaration of Independence said. The king has these hordes of officers who come in to steal our substance. Well, we're worse than that today. Well, it was the same thing on the attack on the man-woman relationship. Okay, exactly the same thing, and it's been going on since the Garden of Eden. All right, and we see it every day. That's why I was lamenting yesterday. I talked about my daughter and her problem with men, and yet I also realized that women um, um, have lost their nurturing, partially because of the circumstances that they've been placed in. This need to survive, get jobs, and things like that. Uh, the whole unit that was made by God to give us joy and prosperity and posterity has been destroyed. And there are a lot of people that still do it correctly, but the forces of evil are out there and they're really bad. And so, like I said, the women are saying, I need time to myself. Well, your calling is to nurture and to take care of others. And yes, of course it's hard. Yes, you're taking a burden on you, but that's what you are. That's what you're supposed to do. And yet women deny it by the scores. By the millions. Military presence. Okay, Elizabeth, I saw you say there was a battalion before, and I can't get through to you here. I don't know if somebody knows what she's talking about there, about where that is. I suspect it's happening everywhere anyway. Burr, it's cold in Florida. Yeah, well, it's cold here too. What books can I read? Okay, we already did that. I got to see Roy Moore speak at Chuck's church. Oh, did you really? Yeah, good. Outstanding. Okay. I was waiting for the slap. I'm not sure what that is. All right, let's look for questions. This is a Q&A. Ask me anything. Have you listened to what Derek Johnson has been reporting, and what do you think about his info? Derek Johnson. I'm not sure I know what that is. Sorry, Chris Ruffin. I'm not. Maybe I should know, but I don't. That's off my radar for some reason. What comes first, a loaf of bread or $100, or World War III? It's kind of timed all to happen together, isn't it? I mean, they're coming. It's full spectrum dominance. It's a multi-pronged attack. I've been talking about that a long time. There are multiple avenues of approach against us. We've seen it over the last 2.5 years, and then the financial thing, and now, the war. It's all about coming after you, and that's why I said it doesn't matter about Russia and China. There's so much propaganda out there that the United States was never supposed to do what it turned into the empire it is. It was supposed to be for us. We be the light to the world by showing by example, not trying to conquer the world, make it America. That's what Britain was doing. That's what empires do. We were never meant to be an empire. Okay, Trudeau is castrated. Yeah, Tucker. The media lied about the missile. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, there's a good thing. Of course, and I talked about that yesterday too. That's why I was so upset too, because this thing could have turned into a real bad deal if there hadn't been somebody out there taking pictures of the parts of that thing. Zelensky still and the Ukrainian leadership still saying that it was Russia that did it. No, it isn't. And that anonymous official should be strung up. Okay, if there even was one, it was probably made up. Yeah, and I said yesterday, I don't want to see any more of this anonymous stuff. If Burns doesn't, who's the CIA director, if Burns doesn't come out and say it, it's not happening. But he depends on these false. All the CIAs, they learn to lie, so he's not going to call in anybody who actually did that, some anonymous character, and they know. They know. No, he's the guilty party. He wanted that to happen. Have you noticed YouTube has been scrubbed of the word diesel? No, I didn't notice that. But I somebody was telling me the other day they can't find my videos. What YouTube's done is they've changed the format. Like the live streams don't show up in the timeline anymore. You got to go to the live tab now to see the archive. Those are the ones that I've done in the past. So they keep changing this so that it keeps people off guard. So the important information gets hidden. So just go along the top of like my channel there, along the top, where it says home and videos and all the way to the end about community and about. Well, right in there is live, and so all the live streams have been moved from the main line over to that live category. So if you want to see my old live stuff, you have to go there, and it's all just to throw people off. It's not anything good. Okay. Okay. Interesting that the gold was next door to the drugs. You guys are talking about things. That's great. I like it when you all are discussing things. It takes some of the pressure off of me. Okay, let's see. Listen to Anthony Patch. Yeah, I know who Anthony Patch is. Good guy. Yeah, yeah, he's good. Yeah, I don't follow them closely, but he and his wife have done really excellent work. Jesus didn't eat pork. He might have known what he's doing. No, no, I agree. No, I agree. When I say it was an economic thing, though, that definitely, not so much on pork, but the seafood part of it, that's definitely a part of the deal. It was a way to control the economics. You saw that, for instance, in the early Mormon church with the United Order. Very similar kind of situation, if you all know what that was. Pork, there's some problems with pork, and I talked about it a long time ago. That we're not, our DNA is not closest to primates like monkeys. Our DNA is actually closer to pigs. So it's almost like cannibalism. So no, I think I'm not a staunch. I don't sit up there and demand that of anybody. But I do think that it's something to be seriously considering. So yeah, okay, the fact that they're that, but again, you go back to there in Genesis where God says, all creeping things on the earth are food for you, and then all of a sudden he changes his mind, under Moses, or was that a restoration of the original understanding? Probably that. Yeah. Okay. Lisa D. Grace says, do you believe Jesus came before in different forms? One eternal round, Alpha and Omega, Aleph Tav. And then the real meaning of Ayeh, Asher, Ahayeh, I am that I am. The real meaning of that, as you've probably heard me say, is I will be whom I will be. Moses was a god to Pharaoh. So, in answer to that, Lisa, yeah, I think that that's probably part of the program. Maybe not in this age, in this cycle, um, but yeah, I think that's very likely in a different way. I'm not sure how that works. I haven't been given that insight, but yeah, very possible. Leviticus because of no refrigeration or way to keep it. Well, Chris, no. If you're talking about the cloven hoof because of the same reason of fat content, no, no, I'm sorry, no. Because if it was because of no refrigeration, uh, you know, how did they handle that? Well, they slaughtered the animal and they ate it right away, or they I suspect they dried it out. So I've heard that explanation given before, but it really doesn't hold water, Chris. I'm sorry, it doesn't. There was something different about the pigs, okay, and I think it had to do with the DNA makeup. Yeah, you did, Don Spencer. How you doing? Yeah, you did make it. Okay, wow. How come read his book? Link is in the description. Yeah. Thank you for answering that. Again, Guns, Meat, and God. What books can I read to understand your beliefs? And then the answer right down below that is um, read his book. The link is in the description box. And man, I got to get my glasses. I'm having the hardest time seeing this. Staring at screens for all these years, I'm starting to pay the price. Okay, so this is. Sorry, I got to get so close. Read his book. Link is in the description box. That's right. And I've already talked about that. So, anybody who wants to know what my beliefs are or how I've come, and that book is not comprehensive about my beliefs. It just shows you some of the research I did. Uh, Actually, it's my autobiography would tell you more as far as how I came about understanding the things that I do. And hopefully, they say they're reprinting that. Okay, so and I've talked about it here on the channel that the publisher is reprinting it, and I put out his information. They're in the process now. I don't know how far along they are, but when they say it's ready, I'll let you know. Yeah, Christopher, yeah, you're talking about Gnostic stuff. Yaldabaoth created the first man and this imitation universe. The Gnostics, you see, the problem with that is that the Gnostics were a break off of Judaism because they were really upset that their God failed them, they thought. And you're talking about a different group of people than the Messianic movement. So the Gnosticism is Greek. Gnosticism is Hellenism, a form of It's Hellenized Judaism. Okay? So, no, I don't. What the Aldo story is about, and I've talked about it before, is the idea of the serpent seed being able to generate um, life without sexual contact, which is what they say Mary did. That's why I made that connection between the serpent seed and the story of Mary and how that subverted mankind's value to God by saying that God, who threw out the fallen angels for wanting to have women, you know, and came down to earthly women in particular, that God Himself then violated it? Nah, come on, no. That's another reason why I don't buy the virgin story. But anyway, Yaldabaoth is a construct of the Gnostic uh, ideas. Now, the Gnostic scriptures, the Nag Hammadi, for instance, the codices, they're very good at giving some insight into that first and second century thought process. And there's some real gems in there, you know, some stories about Jesus, which aren't in the New Testament and things like that. But again, trying to equate Yaldabaoth with the Lord God in chapter second Genesis and third Genesis doesn't cut water. So I reject that. What that is, it's a story about trying to destroy the human family, trying to destroy God's family by the woman having a child without her male counterpart. And that's really what the story of Eldabaoth is. And of course he thinks he's the only God. because his mother is a creature that's a shriek owl. That's what Lilith means, shriek owl. They're here. Yeah. These soldiers, Elizabeth. Okay, Elizabeth. Can't quite tell what that is, and I put my glasses on, and that's really nasty. So I'm not gonna do that. Okay, death eats life to live in death. Well, that's why fruit, the fruit of like trees, you know, berry bushes, vegetables. You're eating the fruit which is, some people say, well, plants can feel and all that, and I think there's some truth to that. But the actual fruit of the plant has something different about it, where you're not actually destroying life. Okay, there's something different about that. Why did Jesus approve slavery? I was hoping we'd get off the religious discussion because that was the culture at the time. People could sell themselves into slavery by their own volition. Being forced into it's another thing altogether. But you could, you're doing it today. What is that? The Jink X1. You're selling yourself into slavery by going to work for a corporation. You sign papers. You're put under restrictions that you can't do certain things. You're in slavery now, and that's all Jesus was saying. You sell yourself into slavery, you did it to yourself. And a lot of people, that's the only way they could survive. But slavery wasn't always whips and chains. It wasn't always there. As a matter of fact, the Israelites under the Egyptians really had a pretty good life. If you noticed, I mean, it wasn't all whips and chains, despite what Cecil B. DeMille said, and depicted it. If you remember, according to Exodus, when they got out in the desert, they were moaning and groaning to Moses and God, hey, we want to go back. We had it pretty good back there. We had nice food, nice water. We were able to relax. We had a good life. They wanted to go back. So it's all a matter of culture. Jesse says, thank you. I noticed that when David sat down to meat, the translation Hebrew was raisin bread. Oh, yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Meat in Hebrew, that basically means food. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're eating an animal. Yeah, it was for them for meat, for instance, as a phrase, right? Yeah, but that doesn't mean that David didn't have meat. Oh, I'm certain he did. Matter of fact, that may have been the only way he survived when he was trying to get away from Saul. Let's see here. Well, that's true, Fox Mulder. That says the Bible is so vague, everyone who reads it has a different understanding. That's right. But see, that's kind of the beauty of it. The problem is when you insist that your understanding becomes law, and that if somebody else doesn't believe it your way, that they deserve to be called heretics or disassociated or evil or whatever. That's where the problem is, and that's the test. When God gives you a revelation, if you believe it's that, honor God and live your life accordingly, but that's not necessarily what somebody else is supposed to do. And frankly, that's really the Ten Commandments too. The Ten Commandments were given to Israel, not to the world as a whole. I don't know if you know that or not. It was to Israel. So how come the whole world is expected to live by it? Now, obviously, you don't want to kill anybody. And I showed you what the commandment, thou shalt not kill, really means. It has a zadeh in it, unlike any other word about killing. And it was specifically saying you can't kill an innocent person. All right? You can't kill a righteous man. It doesn't prohibit killing across the board. So yeah, but that's why it's so important to get into this and Gesenius. If you're going to follow the Bible, if you're going to be somebody who wants to do what the Bible says, you can't take the King James Version and verbatim. You have to be willing to get, number one, into the original language and deep down, and also even further than just understanding this word, understanding each letter in the word and what it means, to give you a deeper understanding of it, because that's one thing the Hebrew has about it that few other languages do. As a matter of fact, the way this is translated in the King James Version is absolutely incorrect. Absolutely 100% incorrect. They were trying to hide something. Darius, the Babylonian king, the king at the time, he was actually a pretty good guy. So, having to do with this word, somebody didn't want the truth of this to get out, and they made it into something that it isn't. Because I can show you what the real word, when they translated it, I can show you the real words in Hebrew and in Aramaic, and there's no way that this was supposed to be translated the way it was in Daniel 6:18. Sorry, Roy, I'm putting so many posts from other people, but this is the only time. Oh, that's okay. Oh, that's all right. I don't mind that. And it looks like I'm not getting barraged by a bunch of accusations and stuff, which is kind of nice. Question: could you please speak about advice on breaking away from today's Babylon? They've made it really tough. Uh, you have to do it in increments. I don't think you could just pull out and go somewhere. I mean, some people have the money to start a place out in the woods, but they still keep track. They own every piece, every centimeter of territory, every bit. They control it all by their evil. I just told you in the Declaration of Independence, the king has sent hordes of officers to rob us of our sustenance. And that's exactly what they're doing. So at some point, it's going to break. But get away as best you can. And I can't really get into any details there because I don't know your particular situation. But in any way that you can get away, get your kids out of school, home teach them, grow your own food. If you can get a place out in the boonies where the county isn't going to harass you to death. But I have a friend that's a rancher, and he raises cattle, and he's being harassed on this methane stuff. He gets these big questionnaires from the EPA and from the Department of Agriculture, and it's just harassment. They're everywhere, so it's tough. You almost have to try to disappear. Matter of fact, I better not go there. I can tell you the story. Susan Lindauer, who uh, came out against the official story of 9/11 and said that they knew who those people were. She went to prison for telling the truth. Well, she interviewed me on a radio program. She started a radio program, and she interviewed me, and it was really interesting because uh, during the discussion, she kind of paused. She says, you're kind of like the real life Jack Reacher. I mean, it's so many similar things. Military police officer. I was a lieutenant colonel, and Jack Reacher was a major, but there are a lot of the things that I do, how I conduct things, and all that. So, yeah, I've tried to pull away. It's really hard. Be nice to Lisa, Josh. She's a great lady. Has a nice family. Has had rough things in her life, and I wish I could accommodate her. But man, thousands of miles apart, there's just no way. Why do you accept slavery in America? Not you, Roy, but to one of your comments. I don't know, Ben Spencer. Like I said, slavery is you go to work. Hey, Walter, how you doing? I'm checking in, but I'm checking out. I love Roy Potter, like your brother. I respect Roy as a gentleman. Okay, thanks, Walter. I know it's two in 2 days. It's a little bit. Sometimes I've done three. I have. Good to see you, Walter. Take care. All right. Good to see you. Oh, that's what it. Good to see you. Thank you, Carol. I should have known, Carol Reed. Good to see you. Yeah. Sorry, my computer bank is full, and sometimes I can't quite find the file that it's in. All right. Let's see what other. Lori Tillman. Yeah. Good to see you. Yeah. Thank you, Lori. I'm sorry it took you. As a matter of fact, yesterday in my live stream, you may remember, if those of you who were there, I was talking about what happened to Noah, and he was so drunk. And then it was actually his grandson, but we just go ahead and say his son, came into the tent and defiled his tent, which means something didn't happen to Noah. It happened to Noah's wife, is really what that means. But uh, somebody put up, well, he was BF'd. I was like, what, best friended? No, he was but, right, but effed. That's what he meant. And I didn't get that at the time either because my brain was somewhere else. So anyway. Mandela effects, I don't know about that. I've talked about that little problem between the lion shall lie down by the lamb, uh, and then it's changed to wolf. That's two different scriptures. People just remember the one about the lion and the lamb, but that's a separate one from the wolf. Okay, they're both there. Just that people think that it isn't because it's so similar. So both those scriptures are in there. That's just an example. Have they started the weather wars in America? Yeah, it's been going on for a long time. Oh, for a long time. Let's see. John Brennan. Yeah, Order of Light. John Brennan. He was the CIA director under Obama. He worked in the White House under Clinton, I think. Anyway, he was the CIA director, and he was giving a talk at the CFR, and he just came right out and said that climate change is a problem, which is a lie, at least the way they describe it, and that what had gotten his personal attention was stratospheric aerosol injection. In other words, what we call chemtrails. They just, if you don't say stratospheric aerosol injection, they'll deny it. They want you to use their terms. Kind of like, when lawyers go into a court, their vocabulary is not your normal vocabulary, so they can fool you. For instance, if the court says to you, "So are you telling me so and so that you're a person?" And if you say, "Yes, of course I'm a person," well, the rules change completely in the courtroom with that definition. Well, that's what they do to you all the time. They change the language so that you don't really know what they're talking about. Was Jesus black? I'm not going to get into that. The answer is no, but I'm not going to get into the reason why he's not. I talked about it before. Very, very, very plainly states, like with Solomon. Solomon was white and ruddy. Adam means ruddy, reddish, kind of like. Anyway, this gets people all upset. I have friends that are, very adamant about what you're talking about there, but it's just not worth getting into. Okay, I look at what's in a person's heart and mind. I can categorically say that that's not the case, but I'm not going to press it. Uh, Again, I'm surprised at all the religious questions tonight. I thought you'd want to know about, the missile, the G20. I said, ask me anything, so I guess I have to accept. I've explained the thing about Adam being formed out of the dust of the ground before. You can get it in my religion series. I'll just give it to you here real quick. God didn't come in and take a bunch of clay and make a man. That's not how it worked. You are made out of the dust of the ground. You are formed from the dust of the ground in your mother's belly. So was Adam. That's how he was formed. Just like you were. Exactly the same way. And the idea of Eve being taken out of him from his side, she was a relative of some sort. But if you want to take it literal, men have both X and Y chromosomes. A man can father another man. A woman only has two X chromosomes. She can't father a man on her own, which is another reason why Yaldabaoth got into so much trouble in Lilith on the Gnostic deal with him. Okay? That's all I'll say about it. Why are there different versions reference the resurrection, such as oh yeah, I know. Well, I talked about the genealogies in Matthew and Luke are different. Why? If everything's supposed to be ineffable and irrefutable and infallible, why are there those differences? Well, the same thing with the accounts. People with their own agendas. There was a document called the Q document. It had nothing to do with the Q from Trump. It's what scholars say that the Synoptic Gospels are so similar that they must have gotten their source material from a single document. Who wrote it, they don't know, but it just looks that way. And they do language comparisons and textual analysis and things like that. And that's why they came up with that. But Justin Martyr was familiar, apparently, with something to do with those Synoptic Gospels, whether it was this Q document before Matthew, Mark, and Luke were written, or maybe he saw some form of those. But we didn't have those scriptures in their present form until centuries later. Oh, Dan Spencer. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, all the accusers are about me being drunk. Really, where's the hangover? I'm a lightweight, like I was saying last night. I had a long day. I'd driven 300 miles. I'd done some very strenuous things, mostly emotional, actually. And I was very tired. I already gone to bed, and it was again that time Dan, I think it's Dan Spencer or Don Spencer, and kept egging me. No, you got to get up and talk about these evil leaders and what they're doing. You got to say it again. Who that really? Maybe it's my own conscience. The point is, I got up. Now my hair was kind of disheveled, and I was hurting. I had some injuries that were hurting, and I don't take drugs. I know alcohol's a drug, but I can monitor that. So I had a couple of shots, and I explained some gin, a shot of gin, in some seltzer water, not seltzer water, tonic water, and then I thought, I wonder if Evan Williams would be okay in tonic water, which it was. I kind of liked that, so it worked. But yeah, it definitely calmed me down in that. But I didn't get angry at those people because I had some alcohol in me. I got angry because I felt that they needed to know that I'm not going to put up with that crap. Okay, so, but thank you. Yeah, no hangover. No, sure didn't. Thank you so much. Still, no, I don't know about what's under the Euphrates River. I like Steve Bannon and his wife and some of the things that they do, but I don't follow them closely, so I'll have to look at that. I really don't know that much about it as far as this Euphrates and what they found underneath there. But I'm real careful with that kind of stuff because and I don't want to hurt anybody's feeling. But this thing with Ron Wyatt saying that he found the Ark of the Covenant and had Jesus' blood on it, and they did a DNA test. No, no, afraid not. I don't believe that. The evidence is not there, and if you're going to make claims like that, you've got to be able to seriously back them up, and they're not doing it. How do you think R.E. L. McCoy, I guess? How do you think Paul was able to usurp James? Well, he didn't at the time. There was a big war. That's what the Jerusalem Council was all about, telling Paul, he's got to stick with the Gentiles and not go to the Jews because that's James's responsibility. But Paul didn't abide by the agreement, and he went and preached to the Jews. It was a big mess. Paul was out there to stop the Messianic movement. So after they killed James, and Paul had a hand in that, then Paul was able to take over from there, and you had the Herodian priests, and you had Philo was dead by then, but his other people, Josephus, people like that, were able to push the Pauline doctrine, which is a Hellenization of Judaism, particularly Messianic Judaism. So that's how he did it, and he had the help of very powerful people, the Roman Emperor himself. That's how. I mean, look what's happened with our administrative state and how it's pushed all these horrible things on us. Basically, the same kind of thing. Well, yeah. Why does traditional Christianity work? Well, because they confuse the two great commandments with all the other BS and fairy tales. They think it's the same thing, and it's not. So, loving your fellow man and loving God, that's right. James even taught that, but James didn't teach anything about the virgin birth. He didn't even talk about, well, they talked about the resurrection, but he never really talked about his brother getting resurrected. Do you realize that? Nowhere in James' writings does he say anything about that. Well, the two greatest miracles that ever occurred, a virgin birth, meaning, that she had a baby without a man, without sexual intercourse, and then the resurrection, James never mentions either one. Whoa! And Paul never mentions the virgin birth because that didn't become a big issue until later. Okay? With the transliteration and translation of the languages, that's when it became an issue to add another miracle working wonder tale to the story. I hope that explains, at least in a short way. What is your opinion on the prosperity gospel? No. My experience is quite the opposite. Now, there are promises that, if you do what God asks you to do, that, the fruit of the earth will be given to you. But that's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. And God doesn't reward you with earthly lucre. His reward is a quiver full of children. He says so. Lucky is the man, blessed is the man whose quiver is full of children. That's God's reward. Uh, the fruit of the earth, having food to eat, stuff like that. But in the prosperity gospel, it's all about getting the dollars. No. Yeah, all the doctrines and dogma vary because you get into men pushing the doctrines of men as if they're commandments. And that's agendas again. That's why, I talk about these things the way I do, because everything has been so, especially in Christianity, has been so corrupted. Like I was just explaining here a few minutes ago. Somebody has an agenda. They want to push it. The sexual thing, for instance. I see these comments all the time. And I talk about it frequently because it's under attack. God never said that Adam and Eve committed a sexual sin, because sex isn't a sin. It's the violation of a contract that's a sin. And it can be that way under some other circumstances. And I'm not going to get into that, but this is that goes back to that word right there. Men want to control you. They're going to come after your food, your money, your housing, your very body, and they control you by what they either permit or don't permit sexually. I talked a long time ago about, and I talk about it frequently now, when the fall happened and God's looking for Adam and Eve, right? He knew where they were, right? And he says, why are you hiding? And, well, we were naked and we didn't want you to see us. Well, then he says, well, who told you were naked? I made you perfectly. There's nothing to be ashamed of about the way you are. But then when the curses came, he cursed the serpent. He cursed the serpent. And he cursed Eve by saying, what? Because of what you've done here, I'm going to greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. And thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he will rule over thee. And then we got to Adam. He just said the ground was cursed for his sake. He didn't curse Adam. The point on Eve was, well, wasn't she subject to her husband before the fall? Did she have children before the fall? Because now, how can you greatly multiply something you didn't have before? So what was the actual condition of them prior to that? What were the relationships? And I'm not going there tonight. I'm not going there. But again, this word, those of you who have followed me for a long time, you should see something in that word that you recognize. How can you get my book? The Crimson Thread is in the description box below. The link is in there. It's the website. It's the manuscript. The book is out of print, but you can go there and you can read the manuscript. You can listen to me read it too, but again, as I said, the introduction was left out and there's 2 chapter 1s in there. So it's best to read it. Make sure you at least read the introduction where I talk about the history of all this. If you don't do anything else, read that, okay? So that's where you can get that in the description box below. And then on my autobiography, I don't even know if I dare show it again. I don't feel like digging it out. That's in the process of being reprinted. It's been out of print since 2000. Well, it ran only one printing, and that was in 2006. I'm sorry, 1996. And I think it was a run of 2,000 copies or something like that. I don't remember the amount. Maybe been 5,000. I don't remember. But the only ones you can get now are the used ones, and they're expensive. So some of them have my autograph in them. So the publisher who did it before has been after me for years to republish it, reprint it, and I finally gave him the go-ahead, and they're in that process now. And they're really pushing me to write a second volume that goes from 1996 to the present. I'm just not sure I'm up to that. I mean, we'll see. Question, Roy, why won't you get in some live discussions? Twitter Spaces being a great place for it. We need you in there, Uncle Roy. That's what I call you on Twitter. We need to sharpen iron. I've really backed off a lot. I think I've explained that before. I've really backed out of Twitter. I mean, I've probably the last couple of days I've probably put some stuff up there more than I have in the last couple of months, mainly because I'm so ticked off about our lying intelligence community and the Pentagon and all this stuff that's going on. I just so every once in a while I'll say something, but uh, discussions on Twitter, it's hard. I mean, if it's just unmanageable. I mean, to answer with DMs or to go on. I've had people ask me to come on. I forget what they're called. There's some type of a live thing that I guess Twitter uh, sponsors in some way. But as I've tried to point out, my internet connection is really iffy. And so anything like Skype or any of these other things where you can get into a live discussion, it's really hard. I'd love to, but it's just too hard. What are the chances of World War III happening? What are you talking about? It's happening right now. Now, if you mean full blown war, the threat of that is almost as bad as the war itself because that's how they're controlling us. Remember, the scripture says there will be wars and rumors of wars, etc., etc. It's all about controlling you. It's not about them or them or them. It's about you. You're the enemy. So whatever they can do to get you off balance. And they're about ready to take your money. They're coming up on it real quick. About to take your money. They're going to control everything you do. You cannot save yourself. Only Jesus can save you. Well, but Allison, do you really understand who and what Jesus is? I'm not going to go into that tonight. Michael Heiser's a liar. What? Allison? Michael Heiser's no liar. No, he's a very serious man with a lot of knowledge. Um, I look up to him. Does that mean that I go along with everything he says? No. There's no requirement for that. Like, he has no requirement to go along with everything I say, or that you should go along with everything I say, right? The point is that these things are open to investigation and discussion, and Michael Heiser has revealed a lot of really good stuff. All right, I have a lot of respect for him. Yeah. Okay. Aloha, aloha, prepper. Jeremiah J, you're answering somebody. I guess you're saying the Bible, but you need to know Koine Greek, true, for the New Testament, and Paleo Hebrew. Yeah, you don't have to know Paleo Hebrew. The block form Hebrew is very similar. There's a reason why they went to the block form after the Babylonian captivity. The Paleo Hebrew I do prefer, but it's just and the meanings of the letters are all the same. You know, it's all there. As I've shown you before, the Paleo Hebrew, for instance, in the block form Hebrew, the tav looks like this, right? Which is the cross. Well, in Paleo Hebrew, it is a cross, right? That's just one example, okay? But they mean the same thing. So it's nice to know the Paleo Hebrew when you see it, but the block Hebrew still works, and the meanings of the letters are still the same. Okay, so that doesn't matter. Koine Greek, I get into Greek. For instance, I talked about this problem with the word virgin, um, in the Greek, and that it's feminine, right? Um, so it can't refer to men, not in the form that they try to make it work, right? So you got to remember that if it was originally written in Greek, if the New Testament was originally written in Greek, we have a problem because the Jews would not have done that. unless they were forced to by somebody, unless Philo did it, those kinds of things. My judgment on it is that those, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were originally written in Hebrew, possibly Aramaic, but most likely Hebrew. And then the translation into Greek really suffers some problems. So another reason why I don't trust the New Testament coined Greek. I mean, it's better than the English translation, because you go back, for instance, like I said on the virgin thing, and see it's a feminine word. It's not masculine. Okay, just as an example. Oh, here we go. Carol Reed. Roy, do you think Zelensky in Ukraine will be exiled, martyred, or will survive the apparent downsize of pew pews to Ukraine? Seems we are living in Matthew 24. Where can we get your book? Again, the book is in the description box below. As far as the Crimson Thread, as far as my autobiography, it's in the process of being reprinted now. The copies that are out there are way too expensive and too hard to get a hold of, the old ones. As far as Zelensky is concerned, it'd probably be, well, you know how people supposedly die and then they go off on some designed to put you under control. That's all you need to know. What happens to him? Who cares? Look at Fauci. Look at the crimes he's committed. Powers that be protected. Ray got questioned on this thing on January 6th, and he says, well, I can't talk about that. I can't talk about it. They really need to change the law about this bull crap about I heard when Senator Josh Hawley was questioning an FBI official. I don't remember the guy's name, but Josh Hawley asked him about things, and his typical answer is, I can't talk about any ongoing investigations. Well, Congress is the one that gave them that caveat, supposedly for security reasons, and it's been way abused. But then it took another turn with this interrogation by Josh Hawley of this FBI official. It took another turn. The FBI official said, I can't talk about any possible or pending investigations or investigations that might happen. Well, that means everything. I mean, in other words, they're saying, we're not talking to you, period. And there's no cover for talking about something that's not under a current investigation. There's no cover for that. But now they've expanded it to any possible future investigations. BS. Those guys, Ray needs to go to prison, and so does everybody in the FBI that's backed this crap up. They're your enemy. They are the enemy. Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, the Kenite scribes did change many words. Yeah, and the Council of Yavna had a lot to do with that, Jesse. They were under Roman control at that time, and yeah, that's when Rabbinic Judaism came about. What is real in this subject matter? I'm not sure I know what you mean by that. Jesse, there's a JR here who wants to know about Lucifer being the author of the Old Testament. I'll answer my outlook on that, okay? And it's kind of what Jesse just pointed out, that much of the Old Testament was, especially the way it was translated and the changing of the words. And the Jews will refute this. They'll say, no, it's been the same forever. Nothing's been changed. The scribes did everything exactly right. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. If they made one error, they had to throw the whole Torah, the scroll away. Yeah. So in answering for Jesse here, I would suspect that what he's talking about is the Kenite rabbis, the rabbis that said they were Jews but were not, that were changing the scripture. And in that case, yeah, because remember, even Jesus said, those who say they are Jews but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. So you take that that thing. And he's talking about, at that point in time, he's talking, at least my understanding is that Jesus was particularly talking about the Herodian priesthood, the Jewish priesthood that absconded with the priesthood because they weren't Jewish. They were given it by the Romans, not by any Levitical lineage. So that's one portion of it, but then this Kenite thing kind of falls in there too. So that it's like I said, I think some time ago I said I'm very suspicious of some things in Leviticus. Some things don't make sense there, okay, and that's why I so much appreciate James and Jesus, and for that matter Hillel, who was a rabbi who lived prior to Jesus, uh, saying that there are only two commandments. All the rest are commentary. Two commandments are love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, strength, love thy neighbor as thyself. All the rest is commentary. Upon these two rest all the law and the prophets. So I'm very suspicious about Leviticus, the sacrifices and all that stuff that was going on. These are economic things to sustain the priests. I did a whole video about beware the priests. They'll cut your heart out and throw your body down the temple steps and say that God has finally been appeased because, they've killed you. Priests are not to be trusted. I'm sorry, they aren't. I don't care whether they're Catholic, Mormon, I don't care who they are. Oh yeah, all the time. Being asked if I do any prayer with fasting. Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Probably more often than I should, actually, because you do too much of that and it can cause you some problems, which is kind of what happened to me yesterday. I won't go into that, but anyway. You like the book of Job? Yeah, me too. Is it true? Well, the lesson is certainly true. Whether there was really a guy by the name of Job, I don't know. But as far as the lessons that are in there, oh, absolutely, for sure. Oh, yeah. And that's where you find out that Satan is in office, that Satan is an adversary or an accuser, or, as I've tried to point out, a prosecutor. Satan's not the problem. It's the fallen angels that are the problem. Carol Reed says, I have a Strong's. What's the other one again? Gesenius Hebrew Lexicon. And unfortunately, you have to know a little bit about Hebrew to use this, because if you don't know the breakdown of the letters, if you don't know the alphabet, from Aleph to Tav, you've got to know those so you can use it just like any dictionary. And then there are other things too. It's like Shin. The letter Shin has two parts to it: a sh sound and a s sound. And so it's broken down. You might go to look it up and you think you're looking up a word and you can't find it. You say, well, I thought it was in the lexicon. Well, you've got to look under the other part of and it'll be in the same area, but it'll be a few pages separated. So it takes some time to learn. Okay. I'm not going to get into weapons tonight. I'm not going to go there. Yeah. Now here's a good question. Dee Dee says, G20 is trying to introduce vaccine passports for international traveling. Evil. Evil to the core. See, that's the problem. These are the things that they're doing. That's why you have to get out of Babylon, and it's still going to be tough. No, they're evil. They're all evil. Look at Klaus Schwab. I mean, that guy. I mean, he's the epitome of evil. And Harari, his prophet. Yeah, Bill Gates. Why are our leaders following what these guys tell them to do? Because the leaders know that they've been corrupt and they've stolen and they've murdered, and they've got to get you under control so they can protect themselves and then eliminate you so that they've got, your fruit of your labor. No, I can't. I don't know how to break the spell that Trump has over people. It's like I've complained about. I have contact with these retired Army and Air Force officers. I don't think I know any naval ones. I might. Marines I do. And I mean, they're critical of Trump in one regard, but then they say he's the only way out. And I've tried to point out my viewpoint, but uh, they're still going to try to work with the political system, and I understand that. You kind of got to work with what you got, but no, Trump isn't the answer. But neither is DeSantis, really. We don't have anybody. Okay, we really don't have anybody. The only answer is stand you in the holy place. Holy meaning separate. In other words, get out of Babylon. That's really the only thing you really can do, and that's going to be hard. But it's really the only answer at this point. And the fact that, as I've talked about, God uses other foreign nations to punish evil nations. They're both evil, but he'll use them to destroy the other one, right? Just like he did Assyrians against Israel, the northern kingdom of Israel. Well, Russia's going to take us out. Russia and China are going to take us out. It's well underway at this point because we've got idiots in D.C. that want that too. Yeah, the, I appreciate. I meant it's really interesting. I don't see a lot of attacks on me personally tonight. I appreciate that. Not that I'm not up to the task. If somebody wants to do that, they're going to get a barrage like they did last night. And I'm sorry to all the rest of you. I know that you want to plug your ears. Don't say those words. Well, who sabotaged the pipeline? I think we know that now. It's still not totally clear, but it was between the United States and Britain. It was a conspiracy. It was an operation that the two of them conducted, just like we said. Um, that's pretty much come out. Marshall came over, or Wallace rather, the the head of intelligence over there in Britain, made an emergency trip to D.C. When the prime minister at the time had the telephone conversations had been intercepted. So the Russians knew that there had been a collaboration between the United States and Britain to do that to the pipeline. They know, and anybody who's looked at it knows. Just like they know that this missile that Zelensky and his cronies keep saying came from Russia didn't. We have madmen and we have evil people running the governments. How is it that in a nation with so much talent as ours, the best we can come up with are like Biden or Trump? It's because it's designed that way, and we have to break away from it. Oh, the Maidan incident? We already know about that. We know that it was a coup arranged by the U.S. Department of State and the CIA, and probably the Department of Defense as well. And Newland, we have her recording about, she didn't care about the EU, what they thought about it either. It was an act of war by the United States, and that's just a fact. And Russia stayed as calm about it and tried to work through it with diplomacy. They didn't start this war, we did back in 2014, and really before 2014. We were working on it. But 2014, that coup, absolutely. Victoria Nuland is a war criminal. So I've already talked about that. Um, yeah, I need my glasses. Tara Lee, why, when looking at genealogy records, do the Mormons do non-Mormon families? They feel it's their mission. I don't care if they do that. A lot of people are spending money on this 23andMe stuff, right? All that. There's, it kind of goes back to the Malachi statement, is where this comes from in Malachi 4. And in those days I will send you Elijah the prophet, who will turn the hearts of the fathers and the children of the children of the fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. So the understanding of that, and there are people that have different understandings of that. Some just say, "Oh, it's just in single families or whatever." Well, my viewpoint, which I had long before the Mormons came along in my life, was that that had to do with bringing the family progeny and the ancestry and the posterity together. Um, and that's how I look at it, and that's really how the Mormons look at it. So they're just they think they're doing you a favor. You know, all right, all right. No pork. Yeah, I agree with you, Jesse. I think there's something there about those things being developed by early genetic manipulation, and I don't mean just by crossbreeding. I think that those people weren't that dumb back there. We keep thinking the ancients were stupid people and they didn't know anything. Well, stupid people didn't build the pyramids. Yeah, the 613 laws, as I've often said. Uh, Again, the Israelites, under the story, they wanted to get out from underneath slavery. They get out in the desert, and then they start complaining they want to go back. Well, what do you do when kids don't do what they're supposed to? You load them down with chores. Yeah, you're going to do this at 6 in the morning. You're going to do this at 6:30. This at 7. This at 7:30. In other words, idle hands cause problems. So whether it was Moses or God Himself said, "Okay, you guys want to act like this? We're going to keep you so busy you can't think about doing the bad things." But they still did, right? Yeah, I agree with that, Jeremiah J. He even said that Jesus, the person you know is Jesus, said he didn't come to destroy the law; he came to fulfill it, meaning to do it perfectly, so that then he could not be accused of circumventing the law, because he was out there to prove a point to the Jewish hierarchy, all right, particularly. Um, by the way, again, I'm going to go back to the two commandments. All the rest were to keep you busy. Okay, and there are people that don't like that. They I could discuss I think the Passover is necessary. Yom Kippur is necessary, but they're the the administrations of those things are what are questionable. Kerry Lake, I talked about that yesterday. Julie Autumn. Um, Kerry Lake was a Democrat. She was an MSM reporter, anchor lady. Did she really change? Maybe. Uh, is it sincere? I don't know. Is Tulsi Gabbard sincere? I don't know. There are a lot of these people that Trump, same kind of thing. A Democrat, lifelong Democrat, suddenly has a change of heart. It seems to me that these people are there to give you a false hope. Then you latch on to them, and then they betray you. Now, am I saying Kerry Lake was going to do that? No. Katie Hobbs, I mean, there's a problem there, okay? And I can't say all the details because of YouTube, but obviously there's a problem. Um, would Kerry Lake have followed through with her promises? I can't read her mind. She seems sincere, but she's a television personality. She pretended to be somebody she wasn't for years. She read off a script for years. Did she ever really have an original thought in her mind? I don't know. So what she seemed to present, I was all for, but I never throw all my eggs in that one basket. Not anymore. What about that seafood? That I just talked about that too. I think that was there's unclean animals and all that. And, I don't particularly like shrimp because shrimp do in the ocean what cockroaches and flies do here. It's got to tell you something about it, but I really think it was an economic thing. Remember, the priests got when they did the sacrifice of the animal for the sin offering and for all those different offerings, and there were dozens and dozens of them, which sounds like to me the priests probably designed those so that they could get their sustenance. they got a portion of the animal to feed themselves and their families. It's economic. I don't think God had much. And God, even in other scriptures, God says, I'm tired of the oblations and the sacrifices and the blood and the smoke. I want you to have a change of heart. So even God was saying, I don't like this. Change your heart. Stop thinking that just because you can go and make a sacrifice that somehow it absolves you. You've got to change your heart. That's what all this is about. So he even said he didn't like the sacrifices. There was something about the Levitical priests that's very suspicious. Okay, we've been going for an hour and a half. I'm sorry I haven't gotten all the questions. Yeah, oh, Zelensky. Oh, yeah, Fourth Reich. Oh, there's no question about what Zelensky and all those guys are. It's obvious what they are. Putin's got it right. I'll just say that. There's not much I can say, but Putin's got it right. Debbie Donovan. Debbie, how you doing? I hope everything's going well for you. I hope that you're being very prosperous and that your life is giving you some good things. Can I tell you a thing about the Fourth Reich? I think everything's pretty much prima facie manifest. It's obvious. DNA, forced medical procedures, controlling your money, controlling your movement. Where are your papers? What else can I say? Yeah, I've already talked about the LDS Church and their acceptance of gay marriage. If this doesn't open the eyes of the Mormon people that they've got a corrupt leadership up there and that God's not saying anything to that prophet, seer, and revelator, they deserve what they get. Okay, and they're going to be it's going to be bad. Okay. Okay. We've been going for an hour and a half. I really ought to let you go. I wanted to do this Q&A so that you can see I am lucid. And thank you, Don Spencer, for pointing out that no, I didn't have a hangover. I wasn't really drunk. I was very tired, like I said. 300-mile drive up since 4 o'clock. Some very strenuous emotional, physical things going on, which I'm not going to get not with me, but and I had already tried to go to bed, and then I got myself up and felt like I needed to expound on some of that. Had a little bit of gin and then a little bit of Evan Williams, and because I hadn't eaten since breakfast yesterday either. So that was another thing. All of that just kind of made it so, yeah, I was really tired and it started showing. And then when those guys started to attack me, usually I can let things like that just roll off of me, but sometimes you got to show that you can be a lion. So some people say, yeah, but did you have to do it that way? Let me tell you a quick story and then I'll go. So I have been pretty mild-mannered. I mean, like any young man, I would get in a fight every once in a while. Sometimes I did well, sometimes I didn't, but I always made the other person pay to some extent. You know what I mean? Um, but when I got in the Army and became a military police officer, and I've told this story before, uh, the military police duty officer is powerful on a post, on an Army post. In essence, the military police duty officer has practically all the authority of the commanding general of the post. That's how strong that duty officer is. And so when I saw altercations happen, and there were all sorts, I got in fights there, barracks fights, riots, stuff, all kinds of things. But when that military police duty officer shows up, that's the commanding general. That's the representative of the commanding general. And I didn't have to cuss. I didn't have to yell. I just had to say, "Hey, Sergeant, book him." I mean, very good, right? "Hey, Dano, book him, Dano," right? That kind of thing. Well, when I transitioned to the Murray Police Department, things didn't work that way. Just because I was wearing a badge and a uniform, people didn't respond to me being polite to them. I'm talking about criminals, of course. suspects. If I didn't cuss at them, they didn't think I was serious. I couldn't just come up and say, "Okay, sir, get down on your hands and knees, cross your legs, put your hands behind your head," and they'd say, you know, whatever, a list of expletives, right? So I quickly found out that if I didn't, say, "Hey, MF, get your blankety blank ass down on the ground, or I'm going to shoot your butt," whatever. "Oh, you're serious? Oh, okay." So that's when I started getting into cussing, actually. So blame the Murray Police Department. All right. So today, yeah, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but it's not really bad either. It's not really evil. It depends on the circumstances. Like I said, I can rise to the occasion. Yeah, that's right, Jesse. That's exactly the point. Yeah. Yeah, if you kill an animal, does that really resolve your sins? No, it doesn't. So there are some real problems with that. But I think initially it was a lesson about the the cause and the result of sin. I think is really what. Remember, we're talking about, and this Michael Heiser even says this. We're talking about people 3, 4, 5,000 years ago. Their culture is entirely different. We're thinking that they think like we do. And I know you know this, Jesse. I'm telling you this for everybody else. So those things that they were put under was because their culture at the time, that's how they understood things. For instance, I don't know if you know this, Jesse, but this is a really good example. In the Hebrew, it was the splitting of the animal in half. That was the covenant, right? The symbol of the covenant. It basically means um, cut the meat. That's what it means. Cut the meat. Divide the meat. Meat meaning the flesh, right? The body. So that's what a covenant meant. That's how those people thought. And so God talked to them in a way that they could understand in their culture and time. Okay? So when you try to transfer that stuff into the 21st century, you ask questions like you just did, which are legitimate. That's why I say you got to be careful with this stuff. And I don't mean you, Jesse, I mean anybody. And I talked about, for instance, the killing. The killing is not a problem, especially in self-defense. There were cities of refuge for self-defense people, or people who killed people by accident. But they didn't forfeit their life for that automatically because it's talking about the zade. In other words, killing an innocent person, taking innocent life, shedding innocent blood. That's really what that commandment, "Thou shalt not kill," says. And then there's the whole situation with what marriage really is, which I've spent a great deal of time on. The sexual relationship between women, that it's men and women. This is, we're going to talk about this at some point in time. I've already done it to some extent. Some of these will shock you. And again, anybody who knows Hebrew, you got to recognize a word that's in this word. And then when you find out what this word really means, you're going to go, whoa. Okay? I'm giving you a little teaser there. So, yeah, Jesse, I agree with you. Okay? God wanted a sacrifice of a contrite, a broken heart and a contrite spirit. Broken heart, again, the idea of a covenant, the cleaving of the meat. Broken heart, contrite spirit. That's really where that was all working for. And so that kind of goes against when Jesus said, that whoever tells people to not obey the law, it will be the least in the kingdom in this world, in the kingdom of heaven will be the least. There are some caveats there, and I understand those, and I think you do too. So, yeah, um, but you can really take that to another level, Jesse. And people don't want me to go here, but I'm going to say it. If what you're saying there is true, and I think you're right, how does Jesus dying for you solve your sins? What happened there 2,000 years ago? is not the way it's been interpreted by Christianity. James never talked about it. Peter never talked about it. Jude never talked about it. It was always piety and righteousness. You doing piety and righteousness. I once said, how does God know who comes to heaven? Actually, I didn't say this. I got this from a sage that was teaching me many years ago, but I repeat it because it's obviously true. How does God know who is supposed to be in heaven? They show up. This turned into a religious discussion tonight. I think that's funny. Thanks for all you do, Jesse. Your insights are wonderful. Okay. All right. I think we're done. I didn't get through as many questions as I would like, but I think you all know where I stand on things, and what we need to be looking out for. The governments are your enemies. That doesn't mean that you need to go out and fight them. It just means you need to get as far away from them as you can in every way that you can, because they're corrupt, they're criminals, they're evil. Governments were supposed to protect you and your rights, but they always get to the point where they usurp your rights and deny them. And that's where we are. Camera's out of focus. Well, that's because I keep putting my hand up there. It's changing, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Well, it's very close to being on a dangerous path. You're probably saying, my issue with Jesus. No, he's the one that said it. Ye are gods. He's quoting Psalms 82. Ye are gods. He was telling the people in his time, ye are gods. Then later on, in some of those New Testament scriptures which leaked over, they probably weren't written by Paul, but at any rate, where it says, Jesus is the heir to all that the Father has, and we are joint heirs with him. Well, does that mean we get all of what the Father has? There are things going on here that, this God worship has to be tempered. And the Jesus thing needs to be tempered, because James didn't go there, as I just said. Peter didn't go there. Jude didn't go there. Okay. All right. That's all. Look this up. You guys that have a Strong's and a Gesenius, look this up. It's not what Strong says. I'll give you a little hint, okay? And we'll talk about this in the future. It's not about musical instruments. There are other Hebrew words and Aramaic words for musical instruments. This meant exactly something entirely different. But they translated it into musical instruments because they couldn't have it the other way. Remember, who told you that you were naked? A little hint. See y'all later. Keep your eyes on the horizon, ears to the ground, situational awareness on high. Prep, pray, stay out of the way. Again, stand in the holy place means, when you see the abomination of desolation that's spoken by Daniel the prophet, that's primarily talking about the preterism, idea that this whole concept of the destruction of Jerusalem 70 AD, but the concept of standing in the holy place just means separate yourself. Guess, separate yourself as much as you can. Holy means separate. Kodesh means separate. And in other scripture, like in Revelation, it's come out of Babylon. Separate yourself from Babylon. That's the same thing as saying stand in the holy place. It's really all we've got. This political system is too corrupt. It's not going to get fixed. Trump's going to betray everybody again if he gets in, which I'm not even sure he will. I mean, with the way everything is machined these days, read between the lines, I don't give us any hope. We're going to be destroyed. And I don't want to see that destruction. I don't want to see it, but it's, because my family is important to me and all that. But I don't see any way out of this right now. Look at this, making same-sex marriage codified. And the Mormon Church is going to do it because the government, the federal government, is its God. See y'all later.